Hey, this is Jelani Stokes, and today on Artist Spotlight, we're going to be talking about the Bee Gees. The Bee Gees were formed in 1958, featuring the brothers Barry, Robin, and Maurice. The Gibb brothers lived in England until the late 1950s, when the family moved to Australia. After achieving their first chart success in Australia with Spicks and Specks, they returned to the UK in January of 1967, when producer Robert Stigwood began promoting them to a worldwide audience. After enduring a slow period in the early 1970s, the brothers returned to the charts with their groundbreaking album, Main Course. The Bee Gees' Saturday Night Fever soundtrack became a monster success, with both the film and soundtrack having a cultural impact throughout the world, enhancing the disco scene's mainstream appeal. They won 5 Grammy Awards for Saturday Night Fever, including Album of the Year. Following Morris's sudden death in January of 2003, Barry and Robin retired the group's name after 45 years of activity. In 2009, Robin announced that he and Barry had agreed that the Bee Gees would reform and perform again. Robin died in May of 2012 at the age of 62, leaving Barry as the only surviving member of the group today. There you go, a brief history on the Bee Gees, and I gotta tell you, it was hard to fit all of their history in just that short amount of time. But we're gonna get to the interesting parts now because it's time for my 2 cents. We're gonna start by talking about their transition from folk rock into R&B and funk. So the Bee Gees are interesting because they literally had 2 eras of success. One where they were successful in the late 60s during the British invasion time. They had some hits like Massachusetts that really brought out the folk rock sound that was popular at that time. And during that time, they were huge. They were one of those big bands like the Beatles, like the Rolling Stones, like the Who were garnering all of this attention for their performances. And let's just be honest, you've got 5 gentlemen up there who are, as a lot of times they would promote them as single, you have lots of lovely young ladies who are vying for their attention. So you've got that along with their music, which really blew them up. But as time started to move into the 70s, that type of music started to fade, and along with them, the Bee Gees, okay? Now, the Bee Gees had always been fans of R&B music. They love artists like Stevie Wonder, Sam Cooke, Aretha Franklin, Motown. They always enjoyed that type of music. So, during this slow period in the 1970s, the Bee Gees, along with Robert Stigwood, felt it might be time to change things up. So they hooked up with Arif Mardin, who was a prime R&B producer, producing people like Aretha Franklin, Donny Hathaway, and other R&B artists. Once Arif and the brothers got together, he was able to unlock this sound that had been deep inside of them. That is, oh my, this is nice. And they experimented with this sound on their album Mr. Natural, which wasn't a hit at the moment, but it started to kind of plant the seeds of where they were going musically. So come 1975 with Main Course, and they have some monster songs on there that I've talked about on some of my reaction videos. Go check those out. This album was literally the turning point that propelled them into their second run of success and fame. Main Course was basically the birth of the disco funk sound that we would come to know the Bee Gees as. And if you listen to it with songs like Jive Talking, Nights on Broadway, Fanny Be Tender to My Love, these were all songs that would showcase what we would be getting from the brothers in the future. And I said on all of my videos how much I love this album. And if you watch my reaction videos for these songs, I've always pointed out that this was my favorite album because This was when they were discovering this new sound and having fun with it. And you can hear a grittiness to it that's not completely polished, which is great. I love first albums for that because it shows the artist at their creative apex. It shows them really just kind of throwing things in the water to see what works without the polish that would come later, because by then they know it's working and they know how to kind of, I don't want to say put it into a formula, but for lack of better words, kind of how to make it formulaic. At this point, they were just creating and just really allowing the raw ability to come through. 2 songs illustrate their transition on this album. Fanny Be Tender is literally a combination, if you listen, of their previous sound they were popular with, mixed with their new sound that they were coming with. I talk more about that in my reaction video for Fanny, so if you want to check that out, go check that out, because I really break down how that transition came into be. And then Nights on Broadway was the other one. This song was so funky. I mean, buddy. I'm going to use a quote by Otis Williams, last surviving member of the Temptations. That's funkier than an unkept armpit. Ooh, that was so bad. That was a bad track. So they came into this new sound, but they were no longer popular. Nobody at that point wanted to hear the Bee Gees and hear the music the Bee Gees were putting out. A lot of times, and unfortunately in music, if you get associated with a certain sound and you're trying to do something different, you may not get an opportunity, especially back then with radio, because, it's going to be the same old kind of Bee Gees record. Robert Stigwood had the idea of sending out jive talking without a label, because he wanted the jocks to give it a fair shot and actually listen to it and like it on its merit versus whose name they see on the label. It became a huge hit. And once that happened, they finally revealed that it was the Bee Gees. And finally, at that moment, they got their foot back in the door and they took that formula all the way for the rest of the decade, producing some of the greatest music to ever come out of that decade. You're talking about You Should Be Dancing, the whole Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, Spirits Have Flown album. I mean, they dominated the airwaves. Going into my second part of my 2 cents, which I kind of alluded to with this one, they suffered another backlash. But this one was even more so of a backlash. The first time when they were coming out of the folk rock 60s sound, it was more of a sense that, okay, your sound ran its course, it's boring, nobody really wants to hear it, we kind of moved on. So nobody wanted to listen to the Bee Gees. This time was just more of a stop. We are sick of disco. Get rid of it. We don't want to hear it. People were just angry over disco and were, about at the top of their tolerance with the music genre. Okay, now I'm probably going to make a whole video about disco because this is a very interesting and fascinating subject of a genre. But they received that backlash. And if once they did Spirits Have Flown, they went back into the studio and completely changed what they would normally do. They disbanded their band. They got different studio musicians to play on the next album, Living Eyes, which was a complete departure from what they had done over the previous 7 years. And it's unfortunate because, I don't consider the Bee Gees disco. I consider the Bee Gees R&B and funk. I will break down why I feel this way in my disco video when I post it, but they got caught into that wave of disco sucks, okay? But then they were able to come back towards the end of the 80s, and they came back and people welcomed them back with great arms. And I think that's a testament to just how great of a musicians, songwriters, producers the brothers were. I mean, they literally were able to come back 2 different times and affect the music world. And I mean, I find that to just be absolutely fascinating. All right, it's time for my song picks, ladies and gentlemen. These are songs that if you're interested in the Bee Gees, based on what I talked about, these are some songs that'll give you a little overview of the group, plus it'll help you get into the group a little bit easier. So my first song comes from Massachusetts. All right, the next one, I talked about it earlier, is one of my favorites, ladies and gentlemen, Fanny B. Tender with My Love. All right, moving on. The next one, I told you this one was funkier than an unkept armpit. We're going right into Nights on Broadway. Ladies and gentlemen, when you hear this song, you can't help yourself but just strut. You understand? And this is Staying Alive. And the song that showcases the brothers at their most beautiful, sing it together. Too Much Heaven. Those are my song choices. Now, with that said, there are so many more songs I could add to this list, and I would agree with everything. You can definitely pick and choose, but these are some of my personal favorites, and I do think they show kind of the development of where they started from in the early 60s movement into their heyday with the disco. Okay, those are my choices. Check those out. I left links down there, so if you want to go check out each song, it's there for you easily. Just go down, click, as well as I've got reaction videos for each of those 4 that I created reaction videos for. Check those out. I break the song down a lot more in depth in talking about just that song, and you'll get a chance to see my thoughts on how that song was put together and why that song's important. Thank you so much for watching my video today. Please make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and don't forget to click that notification bell, because when I create that next video, which I will, you'll be one of the first ones to know about it. But until then, please, 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 I'm going to insist that you have yourself a wonderful day. Until I see you again. Take care. Hey, how you doing? Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making this one. And if you have any comments, please comments right here. Likes right here. Subscribe right here. Thank you again. Look forward to seeing you soon.